All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started this afternoon. I'd like to thank everyone who is actually on the webinar for joining us this afternoon during your lunch break. As you all know, we are currently celebrating our Virtual Alumni Week. My name is Rebecca Armstrong English, and I am the new Alumni Director here at Dillard University. As I said, we're celebrating our Virtual Alumni Week, and we want to take this opportunity to not only celebrate our alumni, but to also provide you with the opportunity to hear from some of our alums who are doing some amazing things. So with that, I want to take the opportunity to introduce you to our moderator for the afternoon, who is Miss Khalilah Elliott. She's a member of the DU class of 2000. She is the founder and chief disruptor of Gafford Communications, LLC. And her company is a revolutionary consulting firm focused on providing deliberate and impactful communication strategies that promote equity, diversity, and inclusion throughout all aspects of a client's business operations. She has worked with several major brands promoting multicultural initiatives throughout her career, including Coca-Cola, Live Nation, Essence, and HBO, while also developing multicultural marketing strategies for Broadway productions such as Aladdin and the upcoming MJ the Musical. So without further ado, I will pass the mic to our moderator, Ms. Khalilah Elliott.
Thank you, Rebecca. And hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for taking time out of your lunch hour to spend some time with both myself and Stacey Holman, who I'm so excited to talk about. I'm going to tell you her bio, and then we're just going to jump right into that if that's okay with you, Stacey. So Stacey Holman, our guest today, is a Harlem-based filmmaker. Of course, she's a proud graduate of Dillard University, class of 93. As a filmmaker, she has directed and produced several award-winning projects, including episode 3 of the 2018 PBS series Reconstruction, America After the Civil War, hosted by Henry Louis Gates Jr., who we're all familiar with, of course. She has gone on to work with him on other projects, including including her most recent work with him, The Black Church, This Is Our Story, This Is Our Song, which I know a lot of you all are familiar with, and we're going to talk more about that and some of her other work. But before we get to that, I do want to share more about her background. Stacey was also a producer on the critically acclaimed documentary Tell Them We Are Rising, the story of Black colleges and universities, which I know we all appreciate as HBCU alums. Or alumni. And then she's also served as an associate producer on the Emmy Award-winning film Freedom Writers, produced and directed by Stanley Nelson. Stacey, I want to get right into it. I don't want to waste one single moment with you because we're so lucky to have you. So first, before we do anything else, let's get some housekeeping business out of the way, you all. This is a conversation. Stacey and I are in agreement about that. We're going to talk with one another, and we're going to open it up to talk with you all. So please be thinking about your questions. You can drop them in the chat at any point in time, and I'm sure Rebecca and her team will help us to keep up with you all. And then we're going to make sure we open up the conversation later at the end of this talk to be able to address your questions. So first things first, Miss Stacey Holman, can you tell us, we know you graduated from the class of 93, right? Yeah. What was your major when you were at Dillard?
My major was communications with a minor of speech and drama.
Yes, I'm a fellow communications and theater major. So yes to my sister on that. Yes. And also you're a former Miss Dillard, right?
I am.
Brains and beauty.
Dillard raises you up like that.
That's right. Well, I don't want to waste a minute. So you study communications because we were talking briefly before the session. There was no film department, right? When you were there at Dillard.
No, there was no film department whatsoever. Yeah. So I ended up going to NYU for grad film school. So, it's just a testimony that you don't have to go to film school or whatever to get into like one of the top film schools in the country. So, that's where the communication program was amazing because it did allow me to just kind of create things that were not necessarily probably in the trajectory of when you think of communications, like you're in the studio kind of interviews. So I definitely felt like Dillard prepped me for that.
Well, and that was my next question. If you could kind of talk a little bit about how you feel, and not just specific to academics. I mean, obviously Dillard is, it's the cream of the crop, right? So I don't even think about it when you talk about like the level of education you get. But what else about your Dillard experience do you remember that you feel like prepared you to go out? Because you and I both know the film industry is tough.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of folks out there. It's hard out there. So can you talk about what you feel like Dillard provided you, not just in academics, but just in terms of your experience there at an HBCU that prepared you to go out to the workforce?
Well, one thing, I have the most amazing bestest, I call them besties in the world, that came from Dillard. And I think you just need that network of, sisterhood and, in some case, brotherhood that, you can just lean on because, as you said, it's not easy being in this industry. And just knowing that, my girls who I've known, since I landed at Dillard, you're going through a rough time and you can just lean on them, and you can just, you have that constant support. So Dillard is just like family, that's the one thing that really is carried in community. And it also too is a chance to play. It's like a playground in the sense that, I was a part of many organizations and a sorority. And with that, you just take on certain leadership challenges and leadership roles. And being in the positions that we're in media and film, you got to know how to communicate with people. You got to know how to hear people out. And also too, you got to know how to, you get yourself bruised up a little bit. And I think just being at, Dillard allowed me to, get dirty, get some bruises, but also too, in the same space, it's like, also was, you're amongst people that look like you. And that's a safe place to fail. That's a safe place to kind of to try again.
Yeah.
And a safe place to really kind of compete with yourself and not so much with others.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And so, of course, our topic today is, diversity and opportunities in the film industry. And I want to get right into it. We're coming off of award season. We just had the Oscars a few weeks ago, and I know that you're following the news about what's happening with the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. For the benefit of those in our audience, I'll just briefly tell you, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association is essentially the governing body that produces the Golden Globes, among other things, and has been under fire most recently for the lack of diversity, specifically the fact that they've had 0 Black journalists within their body. And these are the people who are nominating and voting on these people. So I want you to talk about that as a filmmaker. First of all, to even talk about why, because oftentimes I think people even wonder, why do we even care about these awards? Like, why does our community even have to worry about these? Like, we should just do our own thing. So can you kind of talk about that from your perspective? Number one, what your thoughts are even on the fact that, there's this controversy, so much so that literally, other Netflix, Warner Brothers, a lot of companies are withdrawing their support. It's so much so that NBC has said they're not going to air it next year. So I'm curious to know your take on that. And then also about the bigger issue I think that it is exposed, which is the continued lack of diversity within their body.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I always thought the Associated Press was white. So when they were like, there are no Black journalists, I was like,
right.
Really? Like, and really? Like, that's news?
Order's wet.
Yeah. I was just like, that's not surprising, which is sad. But I think, there's, awards mean a lot of things. First of all, it's acknowledgement from your peers.
Right.
It's, saying, we recognize your work. We think your work was amazing. We think that it was outstanding, and it's credibility. Awards also means money. Awards means that, you have an opportunity where you're getting eyeballs on your project.
Right.
And those eyeballs have dollar signs to it. And those dollar signs allow you to fund your project. So it's funny how it works, it's like interesting. So I think, it serves two purposes, it serves the internal need of, getting recognized, and it feeds the ego, but it also helps, put food on your table.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, I mean, for me, and I think it's, I feel like we've kind of hit this. I mean, I think it's really blowing up in the light of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and just all of these, tragic and continuing tragic, judicial killings that are happening with Black bodies. But I feel like we've hit this milestone before, where it's like, are we the flavor of the month, and how long will that be? Is this going to be something that's going to last for a while, or is it going to be something that's going to be long lasting. So, I mean, that's great that Warner Brothers and all these people are responding, but why now? Why do we have to get to this point where this is now an issue?
Yeah.
However, never, better late than never.
Right.
Well, I'll take it. I know we'll take
right.
it.
We know it's performative, Tom Cruise, but we appreciate that the solidarity nonetheless, right?
Exactly. And I guess, and partly too, people are probably like, oh, wow, really? This is an issue, so there's some genuine, like, people's eyes kind of waking up.
Yeah.
But, I think too, there's another layer in terms of being a Black filmmaker. It's also being a woman too. So that's just, another, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, let's dig down into that because, I'm, for those of you who probably don't know, I'm a data nerd. I love the data. And so UCLA produces this report every year, a Hollywood diversity report. And last year they in their findings, they noted that 15.1% of the top grossing films were directed by women. And in terms of people of color, only 14.4% of those were directed by people of color in terms of those films. So to your point, we already know that it's hard for women to break in. We know that it's hard for people of color to break in. So I'd like you to kind of talk about your experience specifically and correct me if I'm wrong, but you primarily focus on documentaries, right? Is that in any way connected to your decision to go into that particular genre, or is that just where you happen to the projects that you happen to be interested in?
It's been a happy accident. So it's actually started with a project that my first documentary I decided to do in South Africa. So, fired by immersion, I was like, okay, wow, this is really a way to learn.
Baptism by fire.
Oh my gosh, totally. And then I was like, I'm gonna stay in the fire. I'm gonna continue to work in documentaries. However, I do, I still have appreciation and work that I am doing in the scripted nonfiction world. But right now my lane has really been documentary. And I mean, even in docs, I mean, there was a letter recently written that I had signed by other African, I should say BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, person of color. Making sure that was sent to PBS because of the airing of Ken Burns. I mean, people may know Ken Burns from doing Civil War, from doing jazz.
He's a very famous documentary filmmaker. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. However, the number of hours that he gets for programming versus those of color, like Asian Americans, and it was, addressing that particular series that was out. It's, it's not even.
Yeah,
it's really not even. I mean, like someone say Hemingway for 6 hours.
And it's interesting that you raise that point too, because you're right. Like, honestly, of the documentary filmmakers that I think of, I immediately go to Ken Burns, and you're right. And it's because that's primarily what is promoted through PBS and other channels or stations that air his program. Well, I guess he primarily works with PBS.
From PBS, yeah. I mean, and I understand he raises a good amount of that money. However, it's just,
it's cyclical.
We're not asking for his money. We're not asking for that. We're just asking for just time where, Asian Americans can't, 4 hours, the Black church, 4 hours is not enough. HBCUs, an hour and a half is not enough. There's a lot of these stories that are being told that, could very easily go over the time span of, 6 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
So I think it's in all the world of filmmaking, whether you're doing scripted, you're doing a streaming, a network show, a big budget movie, or, in documentaries, we are definitely having to kind of, fight a little bit harder, really, push a little bit more to really get, our stories told, and getting the length of time to tell our stories as well.
Yeah. I'm curious to know how you choose projects, because obviously you make a point of celebrating Black life and Black culture in your work. So I'm curious to know, what is the thing that drives you to make you go, that's a story I feel like I have to tell?
I mean, I've been really gifted and blessed with working with some amazing directors and producers of color. So, and in that, I've been able to tell our stories. And so that's how I look at it. It's like, first of all, it's my curiosity, like, oh, wow, this is something I don't really know about, or if I do, I don't know much. So I think it's, what the project is about. It's, who's going to be working, with the team. Usually I'm on very early So it's like in my past project, it's the director. So I get another chance to work with Stanley Nelson. So that's like a laboratory right there.
Mhm.
And then when I started working with Henry Louis Gates, who I'll probably refer to as Skip, because I always,
Right, right.
I always go Skip. I'm like,
Even in
people
reading the bio, it felt weird to read his name. That's why I kept like, wait, okay.
yeah. So I was like, I always like, people are like, who's Skip? I'm like, oh, Henry Louis Gates. So if I defer to saying,
No, we understand.
that's what I'm talking about.
I only call him Henry out of respect.
Until you meet him, then he'll be like, call me Skip. So, you know, just seeing these stories that are, you know, told by us, for us, but about the larger narrative of, you know, America
Right.
and our impact.
Right. Of
and
which
our
we are a
in it.
part, right?
Very much. So
Exactly.
it's, you know, and there are certain stories too, like, you know, when Stanley was doing the HBCU, I was like, you know, I went to
Hello.
HBCU. Like, I need to, you know, so it's kind of like an ongoing joke in the office, because I was like, you know, Stanley went to like Morris Brown for like, I think a semester or for a year, but I was like the bona fide HBCU person along with our intern.
You're the resident expert.
I was a resident expert. And then, you know, doing the Black Church, that was another series where I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I need to be a part of this. I just, you know, so there's ones that you're curious about for me that I'm drawn to, but the one I just know in my spirit, in my bones, that I'm like, I need to do this.
Yeah, for sure.
Be a part of it.
So I'm curious to know, so you do have your own production company, right? Black Butterfly Productions, is that correct?
Yes.
So I'm thinking about people like Issa Rae, who have, you know, and even Ava DuVernay, but I'm specifically Issa Rae, who have turned the model in terms of producing on its head, kind of, you know, she did it, I guess, essentially reverse engineered it. She started off online, and then now she has amassed this media company, or this production company that includes multiple production companies, including like radio. She's doing music. She's doing a hair care line. Like, she's doing everything. It's kind of amazing. So I'm curious to know, and you know, she's even a little younger than me. So I'm curious to know,
just a tad,
just a little bit. So I'm curious to know, as you see like people like her coming up through the ranks, right? I'm curious to know what advice you would give, not necessarily her, but younger people, particularly whether it's Dillard students or even alumni who are just trying to figure their way into this space. Like, what advice would you, and I know that that's a very broad question, but like, what thing would you tell them? These are the things you need to do to put in place. And I know there's no, you know, one size fits all type of model, but what advice would you give a young up and coming filmmaker, or someone who aspires to be?
That's a great question. My first thing I would say, it's not a straight path. I mean, you may intern at this place, but then you may go left and it may go right, but it may not lead to the next thing that you have your eyes on. So I think it's really, first of all, you know, just knowing that it's going to be some twist and turn, and be comfortable with that, you know. Also be comfortable not having a lot of money in your pocket.
Goodness, could you say that one again? There's a reason people call it starving artist.
Exactly. And it's not an overnight success. Let me tell you, it is not that. But yeah, I mean, you're just, you know, and you're going to have to work jobs you may not want to work in order to feed your craft. And that's not, I mean, that's my story, but that's not everyone's story. I mean, there's some people whose stories, they intern this place. So, I mean, you can start with an internship, you know, finding a company, reaching out to that person or persons and saying, hey, I'm interested in working with you. How can I learn? You know, shadowing is really key. And also to creating your own content. You know, there's so many avenues for that. But the biggest thing I know in all of this is money. You know, how do you fund this? And, you know, and again, that's not a straight path either. You know, it's, you know, the best investment that you can make is on yourself. So whatever you do, however you're getting that, you know, whatever you're doing to get the money to make that film, to make that project, then, you know, by all means, like, do it. You know, do it. And I just see someone just posted relationships. Yes, relationships.
I was literally about to ask about that. Yeah, please.
And tell, like, I mean, you just don't know the degrees of separation. And, you know, you don't know if you meet somebody, you know, I just tell people this, if you're interning someplace, you want to make a good impression, because that person, because everyone's in freelance world pretty much. that person you're working with is going to get another job, and they're going to be looking back and saying, who can I get, to do X, Y, and Z for archive, or who can I do to hire to do X, do casting. And then they're going to look back and say, oh, I worked with Susie, and do that. So, it's about nurturing those relationships. You just never really know who is doing what and what is happening next on their radar. And the other advice too is, I would say, just personality management. Like, you're dealing with a lot of personalities, and first and foremost your own. So you have to kind of know your temperament, and really know just, how you can react to no's, how you can react to yeses, and how you can, react to just pushback on different things. So it's a lot of management you're doing at the same time. But I think, again, just knowing what your goal is, and knowing that, it's everything, and also every no is an opportunity, draws you closer to your yes.
Absolutely.
So
My father has a saying that a no never killed anybody, and closed mouths don't get fed. So he's like, ask for what you want. If they say no, then you move on to the next. And I also think that there's always this divine order of things, that you come across the path of those you meant to come across. And to your point, eventually you find yourself, it ends up being, you find surprisingly, the industry ends up being pretty small, which is all the more reason you need to protect your reputation and do good work. Right?
Exactly. And I know we'll probably figure out people that we know. And the other thing too is that tell everyone you know. That's my mother's thing. Like, you don't know. Like, my mother got my brother a job. She actually got me a job too, because she was telling this person, two separate people about us. And we both got like jobs for the summer, you know what I mean? And they were jobs in the field we wanted to work in.
Yes. So, you have to tell people what you're doing, or what you aspire to.
Yeah. I mean, you don't know. Someone may be the cousin of Samuel Jackson.
Yeah. No, really. Yes.
And have it on speed dial. So
yeah. So I'm curious to know then, as you think back to your days at Dillard, and you and I also, we found this out before this, we actually share NYU in common as well. We both went to grad school at NYU. So pop quiz, do you happen to know the mascot for NYU?
Bobcat.
Neither do I.
I think it's a bobcat.
Oh, look, you're better than me.
I think it's a bobcat. I know the colors are purple. It's purple. Was it purple?
It was purple and white, and I only remember that on graduation day. I only realized that on graduation day, but I highlight that to underscore the fact that, like, this is how deeply connected I feel like HBCU alumni tend to be to our institutions, which is, we both went to another institution, the same institution, but there's something about the HBCU experience. And so I do want to kind of talk about, like, there are more and more programs that, especially now, in the last year or so, a lot of folks, we are all saying we're having a racial reckoning. Whether that is the case, or whether it be performative or not. And so I'm curious to know what advice, and I know you kind of touched on this before, but I'm curious to know specifically around taking advantage of this moment in time, because I actually mentor a number of young people, and have interns, and I've kind of, and even with my clients, try to say to them, we're in a lightning strikes in a bottle type of moment, which is, you have people's attention around in a way that we've never had people's attention before. So I'm curious to know, specifically in this moment in time, what advice you would give to, and I keep saying young people, because primarily as we talk to like the alumni, but I know that there are young people who are probably listening, how they can take advantage of this moment where people of color, and Black people in particular, are, I don't want to say being listened to, but I will say that the ears have perked up in terms of that. So I'm curious to know if you feel like this is your time to tell your story, this is your time to, if there's something specific in that space that you would give in terms of advice to a young person.
I would say it'd be intentional. I think it's very easy, because this is a time of reckoning. In the same breath, this is also a time there's a lot of voices being and saying a lot of things, and those things are important. However, kind of trying to cast it at a wide net is really not that productive, I believe.
Right, effective, right.
Exactly. And I feel if you're intentional of who you're addressing, who you're talking to, what you want your end goal to be, then I feel that will definitely be effective.
Yeah.
And what that thing is that you're doing, that's on you, whether if it's, writing something, an op-ed, or whether it's posting something,
Hmm.
whether it's creating something, a short or even a documentary, be intentional
Yeah.
with
Well,
that.
thank you for that. I do want to open it up. We will open it up here in a moment, but I just want to encourage the folks who may be listening. If you have questions for Stacey and myself, or just for Stacey specifically, if you'll start dropping those in the chat, we can start pulling those up here in a second. We do want to leave time to address any questions that come up, so feel free to start dropping those there in the chat. In the meantime, so we were talking a little bit before. You have a project you mentioned just in passing a little bit that's in the lab, and so I don't want you to
Yeah.
give too much away as you're still
Oh,
cooking it up. But can
I
you
mean, I
talk
could
tell us a
talk
little
about
bit?
it. It
Yeah,
might
tease
help me.
it out for us.
It might help me figure out like
Yes.
the thesis of it.
You
I
have a
will say
focus
that.
group. You have an active focus group here.
Exactly. Folks can be like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, work on it some more. So this
Yeah.
is another series that I'm working with Henry Louis Gates, aka Skip with, and it's going to air on PBS next year. Air dates TBD. And as I joked before, one thing that Skip does is he's like, okay, we're going to tell the whole history of Black people in 4 hours.
Right.
So,
Good luck.
and you're like, okay, so unlike the Black church where we had, 400 years, now we're just doing 300 years of African American life. And this one is focused on networks, organizations that we formed, from the Prince Hall Masons to Black business, Madam C.J. Walker, to spaces that we vacation, Idlewild and Martha's Vineyard, to parties that we have, rent parties, all the way to the Black press and Black Twitter and TikTok.
Oh, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
right up my alley too.
So, yep. So we are, again, it's 4 hours, and we're just showing just the spaces that we created for us, by us, in the segregated North and the segregated South, behind the veil, and even outside the veil once we get
Love
into
it.
desegregation.
Love it.
So yeah, it's been quite a journey trying to just kind of, there's so many amazing things that we've done, and so many things, organizations that have done incredible things, and people. So it's, we're trying to rein it in.
Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about Black folks and how we rise above in spite, yeah, that
Oh my
could
gosh,
go far and wide, right?
Exactly. Outside
Yeah.
that white gaze, it's like,
Absolutely.
we're not always concerned about what's
Right.
happening outside there. We're also,
That's right.
we're concerned about what's happening within.
That's right. That's right. We do have a couple questions coming into the chat. I will go to them in 1 second. I do want to ask you one quick question before we move over and start taking questions from the audience. And that is, so your last work that you did, you just mentioned it, and I want to say the full title right. The Black Church, This Is Our Story, This Is Our Song, which is streaming online. You can go check that out at any point. Go to probably PBS and see when it may be airing again here soon. But in the meantime, I just want to talk a little bit about that project before we open up for questions, because the episode that you directed and helped to produce, I want to know what your thoughts were. You've only got so much time, to your point, to tell this story, and how you focus that story, and also what even brought you to the project. I mean, other than your existing relationship, what made you excited and passionate to tell that particular story?
Number one, it hadn't been told, at least into this. I mean, there's another
Right.
film that was done on the Black church, but it was more focused on certain characters. But this one just showing the full trajectory of just how independent Black denominations were created and built, and just really kind of recognizing some of the myths that.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
like, we got to put some stuff in
that
check
even
for
we
that.
tell, right?
Exactly.
It's like, that is not where that came from or how that started.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And one thing is, we had an incredible group of advisors that were really helpful in just steering us, in terms of stories that were essential to tell. And then there's the archive, we had an incredible archive team, and they were letting us know, like, yeah, there's, actually one sketch of Richard Allen. And you're like, okay. All right. There's
what do I do with that?
Exactly. So I directed hours 1 and 3, but I was the producer, series producer for the thing. So in that role, I was really kind of the time like you're digging in deep with these hours, you're also looking 30,000 feet above,
Right.
and just trying to see how everything is connecting. And that was one thing really important for me, is that there was connective tissue. So at the end of hour 1, you'd want to stay and watch hour 2.
Right.
And then
Exactly.
at end of 2, you wanted to come back the next night and watch 3 and 4. And I'm really big on collaboration. I'm definitely not the smartest person in the room. So I know there's a bunch of other people who are.
The smartest person in the room always knows to bring in smarter people than them.
Exactly.
It's been my experience.
And I brought them in. Brought them in from
That's
the
what a producer does, though, right?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know this.
Absolutely.
So, and you just kind of, your role is just to really guide and just encourage, and also too, sometimes, and you go back and forth. There's not everyone's going to agree, and that is totally fine in the process. So, I mean, that was kind of just, from the series producer angle, but, really looking at just these stories, and also women. That was the one thing too I wanted to really recognize, because, for so many stories that are stories of, women who have done incredible, and risked their lives, to serve God,
right,
aren't being recognized.
Right. They're often left out of the story completely. Yeah.
And the thing is, if there weren't any Black women, I don't think the church would really be.
Come on.
So,
Can I get an amen?
Exactly. Who's going to cook the food? Oh, who's going to, let's start there.
Well, I always point to that scene in Selma where, Dr. King and his cohorts, they go down south, and it's the women. It's the women who are taking these risks in housing these men and providing, the backbone of the movement. So for sure. We do want to, like I said, we want to give time for folks to ask questions. So I see we have a couple of questions in the chat. If you're okay, Stacey, we'll jump right into these questions.
Totally
starting first with our president. Okay. Hello, Dr. Kimbrough. Thank you for joining us. Walter Kimbrough has dropped a question. He says, I know a couple of women students who are interested in documentary filmmaking. What advice would you give them specifically, or especially as women in that space?
Again, that's a really good question too. I would say, it depends on, what angle of production they're interested in. Are they interested in producing? And one thing in the doc world is producing and directing work in tandem, not like, a little bit different than
that's right.
in the scripted work. So you can actually be directing a scene, but you're also the producer, overseeing, making sure you have all the right crew and everything. Right. And I would say, if they're not doing their own work, I think, just kind of create their own content, but also too, they should connect with someone. And I'm happy to, speak with the young ladies, because I think I can probably speak to that directly. But I think just really engaging in the community, there's a lot of organizations. There's was it Black Girl Mafia, which is on Facebook. And, that's a site where there's a lot of other women of color that are, looking for work, doing, I think they also do like, I don't know what everyone's doing Zooms these days. So,
right.
Panels, exactly. Like our whole world is like on the screen. So, partnering with organizations like that are good. And just really just finding someone they're interested in their work and just seeing how they can become a part of it.
Yeah.
The next project at least. Yeah.
It's so interesting. I remember when I was, younger and starting out, I actually asked a similar question to someone who I was, I guess, trying to court to be a mentor. And one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given was by her. And she said, begin to cultivate relationships with your peers, because as you continue to grow in your career, and at some point, you all will look around and you'll be the leaders in this space, right? So if you don't, and this goes back to your earlier point about relationships, right? If you're not nurturing even those relationships, so to your point, you talked about your friends from Dillard, your classmates from there, and how they're still part of your tribe. And so it's like those relationships, a lot of times we look for the big picture of like, who's the mentor, who's going to teach me, but we neglect those relationships that are more lateral, right? And not seeing them for the potential value that they could also provide to us.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know how many Black people were in your program at NYU, but when I first started, there
2,
were like
me and one other person.
Yeah. So I think there was like maybe less than 10, and that was across all the spectrums, and we ended up forming something called the leagues, the Negro Leagues. So
Mm.
anybody that came into the grad film program that was Black, we would just like
Mhm.
embrace them. And again, that's a network that, you know, whatever we're working on, whatever we need, as big or as small, you can call
Yeah.
on these people. So
Yeah, for sure. We we have another question. A fellow Mascom alum, Richard Jones, class of '92. He wants to know: are you taking directing interns?
At this moment, I'm not, but hopefully in the near future, I'm deep in the trenches of this project. So I'm happy to, you know, I guess if you want to send the resumes to somebody, I don't know who, they can forward them on to me. I'm happy to.
Maybe is there a career? Do we have a career services office? Maybe Rebecca and her team can help us with that at the end, and we can provide that information if we figure out who they can coordinate directly through maybe the career services office or something. So I do want to encourage folks, if you have questions, please feel free. I know we've got like, I see someone has their hand raised. Let me see if I can figure out who that might be. I think it's Richard. Are we able to, or was that from the question?
Richard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, great. You can, so I don't know how to put his hand down, but okay. Well, as people drop more questions in the chat, I think one of the things I would love to know from you, Stacey, so we know you're in the middle of this project right now. I would love to know, because I think one of the things that's often missing from the lives of Black folks is that we don't allow and granted, we've got a lot of stuff going on, but we don't necessarily allow ourselves to dream. And I think sometimes when people hear careers in film particular, or careers in art or entertainment, there's this assumption that it's just, you're just chilling, right? You're just chilling, like there's not. So I'd like you to kind of speak to that, about the work, the grit, right, that comes with working behind the scenes. And you've already mentioned, as a producer, you're raising funds, you know, you're figuring out who the talent is. So I'd like to talk, if someone said, what do you do? Like, how do you spend your days? What do you do? Can you talk a little bit? And I know it can vary from day to day, but just give us a little bit of insight into that.
Yeah, I think one thing as a creative, and you probably totally get this, because you're always thinking about your project, and if not your next project.
Right.
And even when you're like watching a movie is work, folks.
Yes.
and I sometimes
I tell people this all the time. I watch TV and film like I'm a connoisseur. I'm not just, it's not casual, but yes.
Yeah. Please. I mean, I'm literally, I don't know if this is you, but I have to like, this is not for you to judge. This is for you just to watch.
This is junk food. Don't try and make it anything else.
Exactly. This is not for nourishment.
Right.
This is for you to just binge on.
Yes.
So, and I've gotten at a better space of doing that. But I think it's, you know, it's you're constantly, for me, obviously talking about what I know, is I'm thinking about, okay, you know, how is the storyline working? And, you know, I'm thinking about if I'm cooking, I'm thinking about if I'm walking down the street, I'm thinking about it if I'm just sitting. That's work. You know, you're troubleshooting. There's, you know, it's always scheduling is always very much a challenge. You know, scheduling your talent, and just shooting in COVID has been, you know, talk about trying to be creative.
Seriously.
So I don't know how, I mean, you're dealing with your clients, I can imagine, just a lot on the phone and stuff, but it's, you know, that's a process right there, you know, trying to be sensitive to people's, you know, their concerns, and making sure everyone is safe. And then trying to, you know, make your deadlines too.
Right. Because you still do have to produce this film, by the way.
Yeah, the deadlines have
in
not
spite
changed.
of all that. Yeah.
Exactly. Deadlines have not changed. COVID, everything.
Right.
It's like, that's, you know, you have to understand, but you still have a deadline.
That's right. We still have program to air, and you've been slotted for this. So get it together.
But that said, documentary has been a really great place to be in during COVID. I mean, just knowing people who are doing like episodic television and streaming, I mean, it's been very challenging. So because we're not shooting all the time, you know, so we're, you know, but so I think it's, you know, you're just, for me, it's like every single moment, it's I feel like I spend a lot of time at my desk.
Sarah, I don't think people realize that filmmaking is not as sexy as as it always appears to be. What you
No.
see on screen is great and wonderful, but all of the grunt work behind it is not
Yeah.
necessarily glamorous.
10% is 50% is probably like the creative part, and the other
Yeah.
percentage,
Phone
the
calls and
80.
emails.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. I tell you,
Yes.
I'm just looking so forward to being in a space with like people where I don't have to like just to ask a question. You're just like
Right.
draft a whole email.
Oh
But yeah, I
goodness.
mean, there's, everything. I always tell people this, if you want to know what, filmmaking is like, just stay and watch the end of the credits.
That's right. That's
Watch the
right.
end of the credits of every show, movie. It's not one
Mhm.
person. It's like
Yep.
a series of people. And there was one person, two people who are overseeing, those people.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that's what we're doing. We're answering all those emails to all those people on those
Right.
emails.
These are all of our bosses, or we're their bosses, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. We have another question in the chat from David Dennis. The question
Hi,
is,
Dave.
do you think that, quote, quality education for all students should be a constitutional right? And if so, what roles do you think that HBCUs can play to make that happen?
It's a good one.
I feel like that question is loaded, David.
I know, like Dave.
Where you going with this?
I know David's going deep. He's going freedom summer on me.
We're
David.
here for it.
I think so. I think that everybody, it's their right to have that, and I think the role for HBCUs is that they're so unique. There are no institutions like this in the world.
That's right. Yeah.
You can't go to Brazil. You don't go to Africa and you find because they're all Black people in Africa, but it's not anything that's distinctly, for us. I shouldn't say it's not all for us, but that's just so unique in this, where they came from, how they were built. And I think HBCU's roles in that is to constantly continue to do what they've always done, is to provide that safe space. Because I think, racism is here for a while.
Right.
It's a space for, people who may not be able to get the footing to go to like, a top 10, a Big 10 school, or even an Ivy League, who may need some training and some support. That's what the HBCUs do. They meet you where you are. And that is what I think they will always be important for. They're going to, if you're up here, they're going to be there. If you're right here, they're going to be there. And even if you're right here, they're going to be there. And that's what their role is: to welcome you, to encourage you, to build you up, to create a community.
Yes. All of that.
And to strengthen you.
I love that. And all of that is 1,000% true. We have more questions coming in the chat. I want to make sure we have time for them. So I think it's Shakia, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Oh, great.
That's her name.
Shakia Stinson. She says, congratulations, Sarah Stacey. I meant to ask you, what sorority are you a member of?
A member of Alpha Kappa Alpha.
All right.
Sorority.
AKA. All right. Wonderful. Yeah. So your soror Stacey says, as a former Miss Dillard, a graduate from DU, an HBCU, and a graduate from a known PWI, of course, NYU, would you advise those interested in film to pursue graduate work from a PWI or an HBCU? And have you experienced social injustice during your career? So where would you suggest students go to get their to do their grad level work, and a PWI versus an HBCU, and have you experienced social injustice during your career? Great question, Shakia. Thank you.
Nice. Hi, Shakia. Happy birthday, Shakia.
It's my mama's birthday too, Shakia.
It is?
Yay,
okay.
You're special.
A great day.
Yes.
It is a great day. I would say go where you feel is the best place. I went to NYU because NYU was the top school. Funny, I did not know it when I applied it. It was like the spirit told me to apply, and I applied. But you want to go where you feel like you're going to get, take you to the next level.
Right.
And I think what's important to say is too that you can go to HBCU and you can still go to Harvard. You can still go to, Princeton, or you can still go to these Ivies or Big Tens.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like wherever you're going to get the best experience, where you feel like you're going to get what you need, whether it's a PWI or a HBCU, then I'd say, to go.
Yeah. I mean, and you and I have literally the exact same trajectory. You did Dillard, I did Dillard. I mean, literally communications theater arts. We both went to NYU. You went to Tisch, but I went to Steinhardt. But I agree with you. I mean, they're HBC Howard has an amazing film, so there are programs, but I think you're right. It's like it's a very personal and individual choice, because for me, I went to an HBCU not intentionally, but when I got there, I was like, oh yeah, of course I should be here. And then later on, I was a little bit older. I was like 26 when I went to grad school, so I was a little bit older, and I had a clear understanding of the specific thing that I wanted to do. Exactly. And it wasn't that there weren't any programs, but the best program happened to be NYU for arts administration. So I think you're right. A lot of it is about doing the research and figuring out what is best for you personally, but also thinking about your long, and also NYU, if you're in film, you're hanging out with other either future filmmakers or existing filmmakers. So the community of New York is just ripe to be able to develop those kinds of networking and future networking opportunities, right? So we have another question. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And
please.
Social injustice.
Yes, please.
I feel like I probably have, but it's like those things I just try to keep short.
A Black woman, right?
I'm just like, I know. It's like, I'm Black, right. I'm a woman, right. And I'm a filmmaker.
That's right. That's right.
So let's just,
pick your burden.
Pick your burden.
Right.
But yeah, I just think just that combination on its own, just trying to get your content made and trying to get somebody, to invest in what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a certain injustice right there.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. David Dennis has submitted I don't know if this was his first, I think this is his second question. How can we encourage more participation in support of HBUs from alums, churches, Black community? So how do we do a better job at encouraging people to support our HBCUs?
I mean, these events are good, I think. I don't know. I'll see.
I definitely agree.
I think and I'm pausing because I am really trying to, think what we can do. I mean, the great thing, we are in a digital world. So, and if anything COVID has shown us is that we can still connect with each other.
Right.
And maybe it's really, providing, spaces for people to talk to other generations about, the HBCU experience. I think, again, in light of just everything's been happening in this country, HBCUs, are very popular,
right
now,
especially now, yes,
because of just, you don't want to compete, you don't, you don't want to have that extra burden, you just want to go to class and not have to realize, you're just a number,
right,
you're the Black person on the campus,
right.
So, I mean, I think it's just getting the word out, whether it's, through social media. I don't think that's the strongest answer. I can't say, do X, Y, and Z, but I think, and also just for all of us who've gone to HBCUs, just bragging on them.
Right. I was literally about to say, send them a clip from your film. Tell them we are rising. The story is Black. Like, listen, I mean, I think we are our best advocates, right? Like, we understand what the benefit of that experience has been to us. And I think, at the end of the day, if someone is asking you for advice or insight into how to forge forward in life, I think personal experience almost always resonates most with people. So just sharing with them the benefit of what your experience was, I think it goes much further than any pamphlet or any marketing campaign me or people like me can put together for them.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. So just what to say, tell your story. Someone said that somewhere, but tell your story. Yeah. Someone's definitely going to listen.
Absolutely. Sure. We have time for a few more questions. If anyone else has questions, Stacey has been so generous. We appreciate all of you all who have taken time out of your lunch hours, because I know a lot of people are pausing. I want to give folks time to drop more questions in the chat. And while that is happening, I do want to make sure that we continue to tease out Stacey's latest project, which if you haven't heard by now, you should have heard by now. I know it's been everywhere, but her most recent work is The Black Church. This is our story. This is our song. You can stream this work online. Go to your local PBS station and see what's happening there. And I do think I'm just going to double check and make sure. When do you know we have thank you, Corey Sparks, for your question. He or she, I'm sorry, I apologize, I'm not sure. When do you know when you've I'm sorry, I lost the question. Where did it go? Sorry. When do you know you've told a story well? Moving too fast. When do you know you've told a story well? Thank you for your question, Corey.
Oh gosh. I will just speak for the Black church. I'll just start working my way backwards.
Yeah.
I felt I gave everything I got for that series. I felt like I did everything that I could possibly humanly do. You know that you've told a story well when you want to see the next hour, if it's a 2-hour piece. You know you've told a story well for me when you are still curious, and people are looking it up. They're trying to find more information about it. And I think I know when I've exhausted everything possible. And what I mean by that is if the archive team has looked high and low for, a certain image. If we have talked to and really exhausted the story of a particular person or a space or, our event, and we've really tried to look at all angles of it. And I think for me, another thing is that when I've shown both sides of it, that's when I know I've told the story well, because my goal as a filmmaker is not to interject my opinion, even though it's like too, I'm telling it from my eye point, but I also too want to give fairness and also in truth, not even fairness, in truth of that story.
Right. Be balanced in telling
telling it. So I feel as if I'm doing those things, then I feel like I've done a good job in telling the story.
I want to ask you, just as a counter to that, because listen, when you do creative work, it becomes open to it's subjective, right? It's always subjective. So I'm curious, when you find that you face criticism about some of your works, how do you process that, right? Like, how do you, especially when it's something you've toiled and you worked on and you put your heart and soul, and then people are like, I'm not feeling that. Like, how does that impact you, and how do you not let the any kind of negative, or and I shouldn't even just say negative, just any kind of criticism that isn't necessarily in support of any work that you do, how do you process that or push through that?
Well, you call your girls from DU.
Yes.
And you're like, Shakia, like, Daisy, like, girl, let me tell you. So you do
they pull off your earrings? We've got to go meet somebody on the corner.
Exactly. So you do that. You
that was the most real answer in the moment. That's what you do. You immediately text your friends and go, do you know what they said?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you're just like, sometimes it's mixed. So sometimes I'm just like, well, I did my best.
Right.
Other times when you've done your best, when you really tried to address that issue, it hurts, you're just like, so, I mean, the pain is real, I can't even say like, but you just, I think it's important that you gotta, it's okay to grieve. It's okay to say, this was really disappointing, however, if I did my best, if I tried my hardest, then I just,
that's all you can do. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I know for the Black church, we got really criticized for the Catholics. The Catholics came down on us.
Yeah. Well, honestly, it's why I raised the question, because I do know that it came up,
right? The Catholics, well, this is the funny thing. My co-director, the other director on the other 2 hours, Shayla, is Catholic. So I felt like we had a resident
You're
Catholic.
like, listen, we asked y'all.
We tried, and that goes back to, the thesis of the whole film was really looking at independent Black religions. Catholicism is not all Black. Muslim is not, that was not founded in America. Yes, there's a Muslim footprint. Yes, there's a Catholic footprint. And also, again, we only had 4 hours.
Right.
We only had 4 hours.
And you're not able to sit along as someone is watching going, here's why we didn't go more into, like, you can't give that commentary in real time.
Exactly. And then I'm like, Skip wrote a book. Please read the book.
It's a companion piece to this.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, we did try, I think, and that's one of those moments where we did try to include that story. However, with the time and just, again, where are we going in the end?
Yeah.
And also one
of the reasons why there are so many production companies, because if it's a story that you want told and you don't feel that it's been told accurately until to this point,
Exactly.
go tell the story, right?
And I look forward to the person who does the Black Gafford story. I look forward to seeing that film.
I'm sure you can trade wounds and tell each other how to heal from wounds together. We have 2 more questions. I'll get to those, and then I'll because I know we're trying to wrap up right on top of the hour. So really quickly, from L, if it wasn't for the women, Cheryl Townsend Gilkes is the author. I'm not sure I understand the question. Oh, someone is making a suggestion of what story to tell. Okay, we'll send that note on to Stacey afterwards.
Yes.
We'll send that on to her.
I've heard of that book. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And actually, I think both of those were recommendations. So we'll share with you, Rebecca, maybe after this, we can pull the chat down and share with Stacey these recommendations of stories that folks think Stacey might be interested in. Well, with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Rebecca. And I just want to say before we do so, Stacey, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I have enjoyed chatting with you. I do want to plug.
Khalilah.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate it.
I want to plug your work again. Her most recent work is The Black Church. This is our story. This is our song. Go check it out. You can see it. It's streaming online, or you can go to you can Google PBS and see where it's airing on your within your local listings. And with that, Rebecca, I will turn it back over to you. Thank you again for having us.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you, ladies. This was a very, 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 very interesting and great conversation. In fact, I'm gonna put you all on the spot right now and ask that you all come back. I'm gonna ask that you all come back, not just only for the alumni, but I think this will be a great conversation to have with our students, especially since Dillard was recently ranked number 13 in their film studies program. Actually did a whole 360 from when you all were at school, or even myself when we were just being offered a film studies class. So definitely to be ranked now, I think we've totally come a long way. So I think it'll be great for our students, current students and incoming students, to actually hear from you all, because this is a wonderful conversation. And again, I want to thank you all for joining us for Virtual Alumni Week, taking time out of your busy schedules. And I look forward to definitely working with you all again and speaking to you all again. And for Richard, who actually asked about the internship, feel free to email our office at alumnirelations@dillard.edu. You can email that resume and I'll keep it on file. And once Stacey has an opportunity to get some interns, or she wants interns, I can definitely forward that information to her. But again, Khalilah and Stacey, I definitely really want to thank you for taking the time out to speak with us today. And hopefully you'll join us again sometime in the new year.
Anytime for Dillard, anytime. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everybody.
Everyone.
Be safe.
Bye.
Bye.